with liberty and justice for all.
Do you have constitutional questions? Get constitutional answers. We'll be answering your constitutional questions live, so get ready to call in now. Are you a prosecutor, law enforcement officer, or local government employee? Want to make sure you are executing the laws in a constitutional manner? Are you a city council member, township board member, or state legislator? Want to ensure the laws you pass are constitutional? Perhaps you're a citizen who wants to know the proper limits on government and the protections for your God-given liberties. Regardless of your role, call me, Constitutional Attorney Katherine Henry, with your constitutional questions during our live call-in show now at the phone number listed on the screen. And remember, together we can restore freedom.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I don't see any questions yet, but Lori, hopefully you can put a reminder in there. If you guys have questions for me today, once everybody starts joining the chat, we have the usual where you guys are talking to each other. You know, I'm not going to be able to keep up on all the chat comments that are going on there. So put in capital letters the word question, and then in regular capitalization after that, what your question is. And that'll help me grab, you know, visually as I'm kind of scrolling through what it is that you have to ask. And we'll go from there. So Mr. Foshin, it looks like you have a question. And by the way, if you, so Lori's got the format. If you want to go ahead and throw a question in the chat, do that. But this is a live call-in show. So go ahead, give us a call if you have a question, 616-303-0093. Hopefully the technology will be working today. We've had some glitches in shows past, and clearly today has not been technology bug-free, but so far things are going. Oh, you got a lovely, okay. I delayed the ads. Oh, it's only delaying it for 10 minutes. Okay, so apparently that's my bad, because in OBS, there's a tiny little YouTube control panel, and I must have turned it on, and apparently I can't just turn it off. All I could do is pause it. So ads will start again in 9 minutes and 40 seconds. So I apologize about that, guys. I didn't realize I turned that on. Woohoo. Anyway. Okay. Mr. Foshin, it looked like you had a question for me. So if you want to give me a call, go ahead and call 616-303-0093. I am not sure what's going on there where it's on the screen. It's showing something like a scroll bar that's grayed out. Very interesting. Anyway, so until somebody calls in, what I wanted to do is kind of pick up where we left off last week. And we talked about a lot of things, but one of the things I wanted to touch base on, because we're seeing it again and again and again, is these lawsuits that people are filing, usually a lot of unions. Okay, we got our first call, so I'll jump to that first. Good afternoon, this is Katherine. Who am I speaking with?
Hi, my name is John.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm okay. I got a question for you about tort claims.
Okay.
I was wrongfully arrested on September 3rd. I was assaulted I went to the police station to talk to a sergeant because I had a small fender bender. Dude threw soup in my vehicle, right? So he tried to get away from me, and I hurried up and kind of chased him down, and I ran into him. Small, I mean, barely just damaged each other's fenders, right? Anyway, so the cop on scene was a complete jerk. I know you just said you cuss, I was about to, but anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, complete. He was something else. So I went downtown. Now I have a history of violence and battery and whatever, you know. But I'm a born again Christian. I haven't been in trouble in like 4 years, so trying to turn my life around, you know. So I go downtown to try and talk to a sergeant, and the sergeant wasn't, and he was an asshole. There's no other word around it. He was an asshole, and he had earpiece in, so I heard him calling or whatever, you know. And I think he was getting my background. Pretty sure they used that against me. And I just wanted something done to that dude who threw soup in my vehicle. Well, the dude on scene said that I tried to throw it on him, which made no sense. I was like, why would I call the police? And he was like, people do dumber things. And I was like, both him on scene and the sergeant were basically inferring or you know, saying that I was dumb. And you know what I mean? I'm like, are you saying I'm stupid? Because I wouldn't call the police on myself if I tried to throw it on him. That's just stupid. You know what I mean? And anyway, so he got tired of me trying to tell him how to do his job, basically. He was getting irritated. And instead of de-escalating or going back to his whatever and letting me get my information and leaving, because I was waiting for information, he decided he was going to assert his authority over me and try to tell me I needed to leave the lobby for saying the F word a few times. But I wasn't being aggressive. It was just out of frustration, you know what I mean? I wasn't pointing my finger at him or being aggressive in any way. Anyway, they ended up called 2 cops out there, and I told them I'm not here to fight nobody, and I was in a serious injury where I fell over 25 feet or about 25 feet at work a year and a half ago. So I shattered my pelvis, my sacrum, broke my back, my hand. I got torn my shoulder. I would not be trying to fight the cops. That's just ignorant as shit. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be doing it. And basically, that's how they try to make it sound. They flat out assaulted me. I got loads of pictures, split my forehead open, and I just got the charges dropped. Like I said, about 2 weeks ago. I tried right away to get a lawyer, and they said I had to get the charges dropped. The next day, I started calling around, and they said I only have 180 days. My 180 days is up in like, I don't know, 5 or 6 days, something like that.
And what state
I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in Indiana. I'm just south of you in South Bend.
Well, actually, I'm in Florida now, but
Oh.
anyway,
Okay.
So I don't know anything about Indiana specific tort law, but it sounds extremely short of a time frame to say that you only have 6 months to file a tort claim against a police officer. Not to say that that's not what the statute is. I don't know what the court rules or the statutes are in Indiana on that, so it very well could be, but I would definitely double check that if I were you. But so what was the charge that just got dismissed 2 weeks ago? What was that charge?
It was disorderly conduct and resisting law enforcement. And my lawyer seen the video, and he was like, no. He was a lawyer that was previously at the prosecutor's office, so he called the prosecutor that he's chummy with, and yeah, she reviewed the video and dismissed charges 2 days later.
Okay. So, the arrest though stemmed from when you went to the police station to try to get them to do something about the other guy throwing soup in your car while you were driving?
Yes.
Okay. And so they were telling you so they refused to take your complaint, or what was it that they were doing that you ended up swearing at them?
They were trying to say, we'll turn it into the prosecutor, which I've been around, long enough to know that don't mean shit. That means nothing. That means they ain't gonna do nothing. The prosecutor's most likely not going to do nothing either.
So what were you wanting to be done then? Like, what do you think they should have done instead of turning
I
it to
don't
the
know. I guess I
prosecutor?
just wanted his ass arrested and do something because, I mean, my whole truck was covered in this damn soup. I was pissed. I was just pissed.
Okay, so I guess this is probably more for future. Well, I don't know. Maybe this would impact how you want to see the case, going forward. But okay, so if you have a tort case, because you tort, for those of you who don't know, is basically you have criminal law, you have contract law, and you have other civil law, which is torts like intentional infliction of emotional distress or assault and battery or um, things like that. And so that's what he's talking about here. So um, one of the things you want to look at, though, when you think about filing a claim for wrongful arrest is, how reasonable is it? Because whatever the terms are that your state statute or your court rules talk about for, like, what are the legal terms that you have to meet in order to meet that burden and win your case? Really, you have to look at, what is a potential jury pool going to think? And, they're going to want to know, well, was the arrest reasonable? And in your situation, it's also going to back up a little further before the arrest and go, well, is your request reasonable? Is your expectation reasonable? Like, you were getting upset and to the point where they were like, dude, you got to leave. We said we would do this and that's not good enough. You need to go. And apparently they took it as an act of aggression upon them. So is your request reasonable at that point? So I guess I just want to speak to that. And, I might have a totally different perception if I see the video. I'm just going on what you said. But essentially, they said at the beginning, it sounds like they said that they, essentially took your complaint and they were going to forward it on to the prosecutor's office, who would decide if they wanted to prosecute, right?
Yeah.
But you wanted to see immediate action, and to you that would mean getting, for them to arrest him right then and there.
Yeah.
Realistically, what that looks like, though, is, let's say they went out and arrested him. If the prosecutor still doesn't decide that there's enough there's no, probable cause to pursue a criminal charge against him, then there isn't, how do I say this? It's whether he's physically arrested in that moment or not, you still have the same hurdle in terms of a consequence coming for him. So if you're just looking for immediate satisfaction of, being able to see him in handcuffs and go, haha, see, screw you. Okay. But if you're looking for an actual legal consequence to his inappropriate and unsafe behavior of throwing soup on your car while you're driving, then that's a different story. And, yes, there's, if they deem he is some sort of a danger or whatever, they could certainly arrest him. But you still have the hurdle of the prosecutor's office that they need to decide whether they're going to prosecute. Because,
right.
The cop can make the arrest, he can have an arraignment, they could show up, and the prosecution could say, nah, we're going to dismiss this case without even them, filing a motion to dismiss or anything like that. So it could very well be, and trust me, I'm not one to unnecessarily give the benefit of the doubt to police officers, because most of them, in my personal experience as a public defender and just as a human being, don't know the law and they're not really concerned about protecting our rights. However, I can see that it would be reasonable for them to say, well, I'm not sure what the prosecutor is going to do with this, and there's not an urgent need for the community to have this guy arrested. So we'll take the complaint, we'll do everything, we'll, forward the pictures or the statements or whatever we have collected at this point, and send it on to
That's
the
what I was
prosecutor's
upset
office.
about, is they didn't take no pictures of the evidence at all. He wouldn't look at anything. And that's what I was trying to get him to look at, like basic 101 CSI shit. And he was pissed off pretty much because I was like, look at how it hit. This is where it hit and went up on my windshield, went on my back door, and then went inside my vehicle all the way over to my passenger seat. That's not me trying to throw it on somebody else, because it would be behind my vehicle if we're traveling 30 miles an hour.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? They didn't even bother taking no pictures or anything, and that's what was pissing me off.
Did you take pictures?
Yes.
Okay. So, again, this is me just off the cuff. This is the kinds of things, like if you had come in to sit down for a consultation, these are the kinds of things that I would candidly talk to you about. Okay. This is not me like trying to pick on you and say you don't have a case, because I'm not saying that at all. But some realistic concerns, to play devil's advocate, basically, is I would say at that point, yeah, it sounds like he really wasn't doing his job, but if he took the complaint and was forwarding it on to the prosecutor's office, one option you would have at that point, just as a reasonable person, this isn't me knowing anything about Indiana and how they do things, because each state is their own animal, right? But
Yeah.
a reasonable juror may think, if I were in your shoes, and I had taken pictures and you knew there was at least a complaint and something being forwarded to the prosecutor's office, that you could have contacted the prosecutor's office. You asked the cop for whatever identifying information, case number or complaint number or something. And then you contact the prosecutor's office directly and you say, I just want to follow up on this because the cop didn't collect all the evidence. There were pictures, there, was a video, there was dash cam footage, whatever you have, and let them know and, take it from there. But I'm not sure that, I'm not saying you should never ask a cop to do the investigation that they should be doing, but if you have calmly asked for that and sounds like repeatedly said, hey, look, there's evidence here, I'm asking you to please take the pictures and send this off to the prosecutor's office. If they're still not doing it, but they're at least taking the complaint and they're getting the ball rolling, then if it's something where you have the ability, you have the control within your own power to take the photos or take a video or whatever, and then send it on to the prosecutor's office yourself, it's reasonable to think that at that point, you probably, instead of trying to yell at them or swear at them or whatever, you're rightfully upset in the situation. I get that. I'm just saying a juror might think a reasonable frame of mind might be to go at that point, all right, fine, give me whatever information I need to be able to follow up with the prosecutor's office and give them the rest of the evidence, since you won't do that. And then if they're refusing to do that, then that would have been a different story. But at any rate, I guess what I'm saying is my biggest concern for you in trying to file a complaint for wrongful arrest is that there's enough of, I'll say, reasonable doubt as to whether your actions were the most reasonable. If there were other reasonable alternatives that you could have taken that would have avoided that situation. So again, I'm not judging you. I'm not saying you shouldn't have been upset. I'm not saying that you should have been arrested at all. I'm just saying, if I were you and I was trying to figure out, is this a winnable case? Is it something I want to invest lots of time and money into? Even if you're representing yourself, there's going to be expenses. There's a lot of expense, in especially when you're suing an agent of the government. So those are just some, I don't know, it's probably not the feedback you wanted, but because it's not about the procedural questions you probably had. And unfortunately, I don't have the procedural answers about Indiana.
Well, yeah, it was, okay, so, yeah, I was wrongfully arrested. I'm more upset that they split my forehead open and, flat out assaulted me when they shoved me up against the wall. I put my hands behind my back, and they could have arrested me. I said, okay, I'm not resisting. And then they decided to try to throw me to the ground and did this like spun me around in a circle. Well, I ended up, I caught my balance somehow, and I flew up against this elevator, put my hands up against or behind my back again, and they still threw me to the ground. So I mean, and then she yanked me, and my head split off of this corner aluminum thing, laid my forehead totally open.
Yeah.
All of it was unnecessary. You know what I mean? That's what
Yeah.
I'm pissed off about.
Well, and again, that, like I said, I'd probably have a totally different set of feedback to give you if I actually saw the video like you're talking about, if I saw it myself. I was just going based on the details from what you were telling me, but you know, I guess it's hard to say because like I said, you have different pieces of it that you'd be looking at. In a situation like this, it's, you have to look at what they would be hammering on, which is the initial situation. What, you know, did you, first of all, were you the utmost reasonable in dealing with the guy with the soup, right? I don't know all the, you know, the answers to that question, but if there's any way that it looks like you were the aggressor or a reasonable juror could think you were the aggressor there, that kind of taints the whole rest of the picture. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we were yelling and threatening each other on scene while we were on the phone with 911.
Okay, so that recording would probably make its way in, and so if they're hearing you in the 911 call threatening each other, then you no longer have that, you know, innocence. You know what I mean? It's not just somebody calling frantically for help if you're also throwing threats back at the other guy who's throwing the soup, right? So I'm just, again, these are just pieces of feedback, things you want to think about. So
Well,
you still
I
might
hear
decide,
you about that.
well, and
I'm sorry.
you still might decide to move
Go ahead.
forward. The next thing I would think about though is, you know, so when you went to the police station and because they came to the scene and you followed up by going to the police station, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you went to the police station and they gave you the answer that, hey, we have the complaint, we're going to forward it on to the prosecutor's office, and you wanted something more out of that. You wanted them to take pictures. You wanted them to arrest him right then and there. Some of those things sound reasonable, right? Like having them take the pictures, but you know, demanding that they arrest him right there. Again, without me having seen like a dash cam video beforehand to say if that sounds 100% reasonable or not, I don't know. But there's at least a little bit of doubt there because they're saying they're taking action, right? They're saying, hey, we have the complaint, we're forwarding on to the prosecutor's office. And, you know, that may be kind of how they typically handle that. If, you know, that police department might have policies that unless it's an, you know, an outright act of violence, then they don't try to make arrests. You know, because it has to be an exception to having a warrant if you're going to make a warrantless arrest, right? So if their police department tries to err on the side of caution in that sense, okay. So again, you have these different hurdles to meet along the way. And if you've made it to this point, then it's okay, so who's more reasonable to this point? You know, is it the officer that ended up causing the damage to you, or is it you? And if there's enough doubt about whether you were being reasonable the whole time or not, then that kind of would sit in the mind of the, you know, the back of the mind of a juror, right? It's not to say whether you were legally right or wrong. I'm just being practical with you and what I've seen people win and lose based on how a jury reacts, and quite frankly how a judge, because a judge is human too, and unfortunately it's not just black and white what the law says. Oftentimes, you know, they hear things, they have a bias, so it's whether you had a bench trial or a jury trial, you have to think of some of these same factors. But as far as what they did that split your forehead open and they did all that stuff, again, this is where I would really need to see the video to really comment on that. But if you said it's a female officer, and
there was 3 of them, but the female's the one that got aggressive with me.
Okay.
And the sergeant was holding me down for her.
Okay.
It was really fucked up.
So again, without me being able to see it, I could totally change my mind. But when I hear that it's a female officer, I'm thinking, okay, well, that changes things a little bit because, you know, how tall is she? How tall are you? How much does she weigh? How much do you weigh?
The sergeant is the one I was talking to, and I was already on the ground. And he's He's wrenching on my arm to hold me down. And here's the messed up part that I left out. She gets a text in the middle of it, so she steps away from it. Then the walker, the officer that was on my legs, steps away from me and covers his body cam. And she's over there getting something on her phone. Then she comes back and she just gets brutal with me.
Okay. So that's where you're thinking that they were looking up your criminal history and seeing that you have a history of different violent activities. Again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just trying to get you to see what a jury might see. Because you could be legally right all day long. But if there's enough, I don't know, like emotional side of it, that a jury would look at it and go, ooh, that doesn't sit right with me, then I would hate for you to invest thousands of dollars and, hundreds, if not thousands of days, because this case would last way more than a year. I'd hate for you to have that big of an investment if the reality of it is that you wouldn't be able to recover anything. I don't want you to be worse off than you are now about it.
I want my $6,000 back.
What was the $6,000 for hiring the defense attorney?
I had to hire 2 different lawyers because the first one wasn't worth the shit.
Okay. Well, most attorneys aren't, unfortunately. So, yeah, I mean, gosh, I wish I had something that was, I don't know, like a beacon of light for you in this. I'm just seeing so many different things, I don't know. If you have an attorney that has viewed the footage and they think, oh my goodness, this is awful, no matter what happened to this point, they never should have done this, then I think you should pursue it. And that's
what he said. That's as soon as he reviewed it, he's like, "Oh no, timestamp." Because my first lawyer got me an edited. It looked like a YouTube video, and
okay.
I'm not kidding you. It had the red and white play symbol like a YouTube video, and it was completely edited. And for some unknown reason, she took off her body cam after coming back and assaulting me. Then the 2 males jumped on me with knees or whatever. That's when they, because the sergeant never got off, but then they started planting knees into me, and she takes her body cam off. And you hear some scruffling around, and somehow, which you don't see it, a transfer to another hand. As they must have did some cutting. Next thing you know, the sergeant has the camera, and he sets it down facing up by my head, which was really odd because right before she took it off, they had the cuffs out, and they're getting ready to cuff me. So why would she take it off? It was really weird.
Right.
And completely edited out her assaulting me, her getting something on her phone.
Okay, well, that by itself is evidence. If they are the ones that sent over that video to you, to the first attorney, and then you got your hands on an unedited version, that would show, if they cut out the bad parts of her assaulting you, that they know that they've done something wrong. So yeah, it sounds, so back to your original question about 6 months and it's up in a few days and all that, I don't know really, what is it that you think that I could help you with the shortness of time frame, or did you have a specific question about that?
I guess tort claims, pretty much tort claims. And this is going to cost me thousands?
Any case will cost you thousands. Any case.
No lawyer seems to want to help me. I've called all the way down to Indianapolis from Fort Wayne. I can't find anybody that either has the time or just wants to,
Now, what you might want to consider doing, so some states, what they have is, let's say your time period is the 6 months, right? It's 180 days from the incident. Then you want to look at what is the requirement. Sometimes it's just filing a notice of a lawsuit. So in that case, if the notice is only, so Michigan, for example, a lot of their forms are on the state court administrative office website, and it's just check boxes and fill in the blanks, and it might be a 1 or 2 page document that you file to get to the next stage, and that might give you enough time to be able to still find an attorney, or at least start researching the heck out of the situation to be able to adequately represent yourself. But generally speaking, it's some sort of notice like that is what you have to file in a situation. Now, sometimes it's a notice that you also have to file with the court at the same time. And if that's the case, then you might have to pay a filing fee, which is typically a few $100s, depending on the jurisdiction and the type of case. But
At the time of filing?
it just depends. Like, I don't know for sure what Indiana's, what the first step is that you have to take. But if it's some sort of notice of claim or notice of lawsuit or something like that, sometimes all you have to do is serve that on the police department or the individuals involved. Sometimes you also have to file it in the court where you would end up filing the case. So you would just have to look at what the court rules and what the law say about that. But generally speaking, it's some sort of notice. And if you do have to actually commence the lawsuit within that 6 months, then you have the filing fee. So again, without knowing how they set the filing fees there, I can't tell you even remotely what it would be, but generally speaking, I would expect it'd be a few $100s.
Okay.
So, really the best thing for you to do is to start with your civil, your civil court rules, your Indiana, like go to your state court website, the Indiana Supreme Court, and they should have your state court rules, I can't, like the words I'm looking for today are not coming. But you have your criminal rules and you have your civil rules. It'd be your civil rules that you want to look at for the, a tort claim. So look through the whole table of contents and look for the kinds of, things that would talk about this kind of case or talk about, how long of a time period. And if you don't see anything there, or even if you think you do, you should also double check, go to your legislature's website, your state legislature, and look for essentially the table of contents for your state's statutes. And start looking, maybe print it off and then highlight all the main topics that you think might be relevant. Anything that talks about lawsuits or court rules in general or, court procedures or something like that. And then,
So state legislator.
Yeah, your state legislature website. That's most likely where you're going to find the official online version of your state statutes. If not,
Okay,
you should find a link. And then your state Supreme Court would be the best place to start looking for your state's court rules, your civil court rules.
Okay, and then try to cross-reference cases like mine?
Yeah, so you're going to be thinking about, looking for words like tort, claims against government officials, wrongful arrest, anything that's related to what you're talking about. Maybe there's just general civil, there's statute of limitations. That's a phrase that you're going to want to look at, particularly in state statutes, because it's a statute of limitations. So, and you might even, it might be worth it to go to your local courthouse or library and see if they have, like a Westlaw access or something where you can get some legal cheat sheets, whether it be online or just actual books that, kind of put together, for example, somewhere behind me in one of these books is the Minnesota, a really great one. I never saw an analogous one that did it so well for Michigan, but for Minnesota, where I started out as an attorney, there's a little spiral bound book that's all about the statute of limitations, and it goes through all different kinds of civil cases and might even have criminal statute of limitations in there. And it tells you what statute to look, what statute it is, or statutes if there's multiple statutes involved, and what the time frame is. And it's a great resource. So there might be a book like that for Indiana and the statute of limitations. So that'd be something to look up if you're at a law library.
Okay. Wonder if they have tort claims for dummies.
They might, you know, it might be something to try. So hopefully that gets you going in the right direction. And like I
Thank you. I
said,
appreciate it.
yeah, I do want you to consider some of those other things. So, you know, just what would, if you were a juror and you saw the whole transaction start to finish, you heard the 911 call, you saw the body cam footage, you saw, you know, the pictures, any evidence, you saw the pictures of your injuries, you saw the whole thing start to finish, would you think that it would be something that the officers need to pay compensation for? Just do your best
Yeah.
to take
I
yourself out of
wasn't
it.
being aggressive in the police station, so I mean that's where it matters to me.
Well, I'm
You
just
know.
saying though, don't be that narrow, you know, focused on it. Take the step back to what the whole frame of reference is for the whole incident, because that's what a jury would be hearing about. And
Yeah.
so get that whole picture in your mind and go, okay, if I were a neutral third party, had nothing to do with this case, and I heard of all these things, I saw all the video, I saw all the pictures, would I think this is something, because there's a difference between, okay, the officer did wrong versus the officer acted so egregiously that they should be paying out compensation, or the police department should be paying out compensation, right? An officer can be wrong and not be wrong to the point of having to compensate somebody thousands of dollars, right?
Yeah.
So, because people make mistakes all the time, that, you know, they're human just like we are. But it's so just, you know, you're in the best position to have all that information, the video and the photos and all that right at your fingertips. Just keep that in mind. That's the question I want you to ask yourself. So think about that for the rest of today. And then if you're still like, nope, I've looked at everything, and I think even if they heard the 911 tape, even if they did this and saw that and whatever, I think a reasonable juror would think that I should be compensated here, then pursue it. Go those routes we just talked about. But if not, if you're like, gosh, I don't know, I would really think maybe they'd struggle with making the police department compensate me given all the factors. I think they might struggle with that. Then you might want to, you know, just for sake of not being worse off than you are now, you might want to question moving forward at that point. But that's a decision you have to make. So,
Okay.
all right. Well, thanks for calling in today, and I guess let us know in, you know, a few weeks what you end up doing.
Okay. First, I want to say thank you, and I'm glad to see you're doing better. I've been a subscriber for a year. It was right before you got sick, and then there was, you know, I didn't know what happened, and I'm glad to see you're better.
Well, thank
And I
you.
do recall you hearing you moved to Florida. I have very short memory.
That's okay. I'm always going to be a Michigander. I was born there. My kids were born there, at least 3 of them. So,
I was too when we moved down here for work. So, but you're awesome. Thank you. I'm liking seeing your shows back up, and I'm watching.
all right. Sounds good. Well, have a great
All
day.
right. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. All right, guys. So, I know there's been a lot of chat. I think there might have been some questions. I'm just gonna, oh wow, there's been a lot of chat since I last looked at it. So I'm gonna scroll quick, and if I skip over your question, I apologize. Otherwise, Foshin, if you're still there and you had a question, Foshin, if you are still there and you had a question, I think I saw you say something about you sent me a text. I don't have any of that open. I have my phone silenced. Sometimes it misbehaves and makes sounds and things when we have the live show, but generally speaking, my phone is silenced. And the only thing I have up is the call screen to get calls or the comments that are coming in here. Oh, okay. Amy, half an hour ago, Amy asked, how do you feel about Governor DeSantis creating a Department of Government Efficiency state task force? Now, I'm going to be a little ashamed and humbled to admit this, but I had no idea he was doing that. I've read dozens of articles about what Musk is doing with, you know, the Department of Government Efficiency on a national level, but I did not know we had a state version of it. And I think that's phenomenal. Since I don't know anything about the details, I can't say either way if it sounds like it's great in execution, but it's certainly a great idea. There should always be accountability. There should always be auditing and transparency of government resources and government work. The amount, in fact, that's what I was starting to talk about before we got that last call. We talked about it a little bit in the last show, but I wanted to hammer on it a little bit more because there's been even more and more and more lawsuits against these executive orders, against the work that the Department of Government Efficiency is doing, trying to shut them down, trying to stop them from having access to government systems. The whole thing is, it's ridiculous that people think we should stop auditing what the government is doing. Why should we stop auditing what the government is doing? The American people have a right to know what the government is doing. And I saw within the same article, I saw two different numbers. I saw 2.8 and 2.28. So I'm not sure which one is the typo and which one's the correct number. But whether it's 2.28 million or 2.8 million, that's a lot of government workers. We don't need millions of federal government workers. That is just absurd. So, and that was full-time numbers. So those were full-time employees. I love the fact that they had a deadline of this past Monday, I think it was this past Monday, to that every federal full-time government employee had to send in an email and copy their supervisor, but they had to send a response to this email saying, what are the things, give a bullet point list of the things that you have accomplished in your job this last week. If you can't give a bullet point of 5 things that you've accomplished at your job, I don't care if you're in government or in the private sector, you probably shouldn't have that job anymore. 5 things? That's not hard to do. An efficient person doing their job would have 5 things accomplished in an hour, certainly within a day, but in a week, if you're a full-time employee, you should have a lot more than 5 things that you can show for it. So anyway, I am just moving my little, I can't remember like I used to be able to, so I have to make myself notes about the things that we talk about in case they come up. So, okay, John Q. Public asked a question, are mental health illness evaluations constitutional for a concealed carry weapon firearm case when no violence took place? That's kind of a loaded question. So I don't know what kind of case. There's a lot missing from that. Is it a civil case? Is it a criminal case? If it was a criminal case, what are the specific charges? What's the context? Generally speaking, there has to be some sort of reason for a mental health evaluation. Now, that has nothing, whether it's about guns, whether it's about custody of your child, whether it's about having a driver's license or whatever the freedom is that we're talking about, it's none of the government's business to have access to our mental health records unless there is a specific, clearly identifiable, and at the very least reasonable standard for why they're requesting that information. So if there's been evidence, for example, I watched Chicago PD and Chicago Med and all those shows. And I want to say last week's episode in Chicago Med, there was a hearing where it was a custody hearing. And okay, well, it was going to be a good example to talk about, but I'll answer this call instead. Or I won't. Whoever you were that just called from the 586 area code. Oh, looks like you called in our last show as well. I don't know why. Yeah, you're the person that I was having trouble answering the last time. So I will try to give you a call back in just a second if you don't end up calling me back and it works. Let's see. Hello?
Hello, this is Eddie. Calling in about the question for the firearm and the mental health illness evaluation.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I didn't want to hog up because the last 2 shows I've actually talked about this here, what's going on in Macomb County. So our county prosecutor, really quick, our county prosecutor, Peter J. Lucido, he is mandating that in all firearms cases that a mental health illness evaluation has to be completed with every firearms case. And from the previous episodes you've had, this is involving an open holstered carry situation in my own vehicle, where I was driving my own vehicle. I was stopped, and that was the charge was CCW. In order to continue prosecuting the case, he wants to do a mental health illness evaluation as a part of continuing on with the prosecution. My assertion is there is no such situation at all, because you have to, answer on your 4473 when you get your firearm. I've been carrying a firearm for many years, being prior military and prior law enforcement. So as far as I'm concerned, this is just a witch hunt, and it's not even a necessary situation because there was no violence involved here whatsoever. This is just a mala prohibita crime, and not something that's mala in se, which means there was violence involved and somebody was harmed. This is just a prohibited situation because of a licensing issue, and they believe you have to have a license in order to carry your own vehicle, which I contest that it's not necessary to have a license to carry in your own vehicle if you're open holstered carry because you're in your own vehicle, but they don't see it that way. So now they want to say, well, you're mentally ill if you think that you are going to carry a firearm around and you don't have to have a license in order to do it, even though Michigan is an open carry state. So,
so that's kind of loaded, but let's kind of break that apart. So first of all, I don't know all the specifics of his whole record of prosecutions. In general, I could tell you that Pete Lucido is known for being a Republican, not only that, but actually being a conservative. So again, that's not to say on specifics on every single kind of case or anything like that, just that he's been willing to sign on to some pro-life amicus briefs and different things that I was working on, different projects. I have reached out and asked him, and he's been supportive of some of the work that I've been doing. Again, that doesn't mean we would agree on every issue, but just for those who are hearing the call and to give them a little background. And so we're talking about in Michigan. And so this isn't some crazy liberal who's outright attacking the Second Amendment. This is coming from a Republican who's held that office for quite a few years now as lead prosecuting attorney in the county. But it's interesting. I wonder what the purpose. So for example, I'm not saying that I would agree with it anyway, but I wonder if I were in his shoes. And I know that Michigan has done, without my good friend 2A EDU sitting right next to me to keep me up to date all the time, I have not kept up to date completely on what all the firearms laws changes have been in Michigan since I left. I just know there's a lot and it's all bad. So yes. If I were in his shoes, one way that he might be trying to do things is... So I could see that if I have a case like yours, there's no violence, anything like that, and there's something that I would disagree with the law, but you might meet the very definition of that particular crime, but I don't personally agree with the crime. That's not the kind of prosecutorial discretion that I'm supposed to be exercising. Right? I'm not supposed to blanket say I'm not going to prosecute for any kind of offense. Quite frankly, though, unless it's unconstitutional. But I'm going to be honest, I think he would disagree with the laws that have been passed. I don't think he would take the full stance in recognizing that they're completely unconstitutional right out the gate. So with that in mind, I could see that maybe he would try to utilize this, especially if he has no reason to think mental health is at all an issue for you. Why he might ask for this so that he has proof to show why there should be a dismissal. This is just another, where if I were in his shoes, another thing to say, hey, this is just, we checked all the boxes, the arrest was made or the case was started, and we assessed for, whatever concerns are that these new stupid laws are asking us to do. And look, I went above and beyond with defendants and I made sure that their mental health was A-okay. And look, it is. There's no reason why this case shouldn't be dismissed. Again, maybe that's a stretch because I don't know enough of the facts I don't know what's going on, but you're saying if he's taking the stance across the board, that could be. Now, if you had said it's, if you had named one of the other prosecutors that I know is just inherently a flaming liberal, then I would go, oh, okay, they're just attacking the Second Amendment. So let's start with that premise and realize what they're trying to do with this. So I don't know if that makes sense. Again, I could be totally way off base, but Pete Lucido, from what I have seen, has been on the right side of freedom issues, at least in the experience that I've had with things that he's worked on.
I think what's happened is since the Michigan State situation that happened at the Michigan State University, the water pad situation that happened in Shelby Township, which you may not be aware of, there was an unhinged individual that went up in there and shot up a water pad play place in Shelby Township, Michigan. And then you had another situation with the Crumblies that happened in Oakland County. I think that it's been polarized and hypersensitive having to do with firearm situations, which is perfectly understandable that people have committed crimes. But when you have an individual just simply standing on a constitutional issue saying, hey, this is wrong, I'm just exercising my Second Amendment rights, I haven't bothered anybody, I'm not a violent person or anything like that, and already assuming, well, you have to have a mental health issue if you decide to carry, and you're standing on a constitutional fight saying, hey, this is wrong, you shouldn't be charging anybody that's, open holster carry, open carry in their own vehicle. And the process they're taking is, well, if you don't go along with getting the permission slip, then you must be mentally ill and you need to have a mental health illness evaluation because you're not going along with an unconstitutional law.
Well, I mean, if that's really the frame of mind, then yeah, I would object to it. In fact, I had my own dealings with Michigan, with CCW and everything else. It was a different scenario. I never had an arrest for that or anything like that, but I was challenging things the way my county was handling it. So, I mean, what has the judge said in your case? Has the judge actually ordered this evaluation? Where does that stand?
No, it hasn't happened as of yet. Like I said, I went to, since your last show, I've gone to court. I have now the previous attorney that was working with the MIGOP dropped out of it because he was just mainly an election law attorney. Now it's a court-appointed public defender. I don't really have much confidence in him, but it is what it is. I do know that there is an attorney up here in Michigan, William Mays, that just did a YouTube video where he's challenging also the constitutionality of the CCW law. And in his case, it's having to do with a DUI situation because he's a DUI attorney. Okay. And I guess his client got popped with DUI, and now he's challenging the constitutionality, whether he should have his firearm rights taken away from him from a DUI situation. And so he's actually fighting the constitutionality of the CCW law under the Bruin decision, under the text and historical tradition, which is the same position I was taking, whether or not these laws are even constitutional, because Michigan wasn't even a state until 1837. And when you're looking at the constitutionality of the text and historical tradition, you're supposed to look at the law between 1791 to 1826, when the last founding father passed away, which was Andrew Jackson. And since Michigan had become a state until 1837, there would be no text and historical tradition of firearm regulation under the Bruin decision.
I'm not sure that that's exactly how the Supreme Court would take that, extend their analysis, but you and I talked about that before, that yes. I totally disagree with having to utilize that kind of complex. I was not a fan of the Bruin decision. I thought that was a piece of shit because they didn't simply read the Constitution, read the Second Amendment, put the period at the end and go, okay, well, you have a right to keep and bear arms, period. The end. That's really as simple as it is. The fact that the Supreme Court and every court makes it more complicated than what it is really frustrating. But, to a certain extent, you got to play their game and utilize their cases and their precedent and all that stuff in order to win the case sometimes. And it's very frustrating. But we'll chisel away at it piece by piece. But anyway, yeah. So is a mental health evaluation appropriate in that context? I mean, again, wait to see what it really looks like in your case, how it's presented. Is there an actual order from a court or something of that nature, and what the findings are for such an order? Because it could be he asks for it and the judge says, no, I don't think that's relevant to this case, and then it's not even your problem. You know what I mean?
The feeling I get is Judge Diana Drzezinski is really on board with us here. This seems to be the state of play, and she's not exactly Second Amendment friendly at all. My court-appointed public defender doesn't really seem to be that way either, but Second Amendment friendly at all. But when you're broke and you don't have the funds, this is what you got to deal with. So, unfortunately, that's what it is.
Right.
So. And even our state constitution, Article 1, Section 6 says the same thing. It doesn't even have the well-regulated or militia in it. It just says that the people shall have the right to keep and bear arms. It doesn't say anything about permission slip, whether it's concealed or open carry or anything else. It just says we have the right to keep and bear arms. And evidently, that's totally being ignored in this state as well. So.
Exactly. So, that's something that's an important point I want everybody to pay attention to. Now, I don't have most state constitutions memorized by any stretch of the imagination, but I have a fair amount of experience with the Michigan State Constitution as well as the Florida State Constitution, and both of them do a really great job of enhancing the protections for our God-given liberties above and beyond what the U.S. Constitution does. So the U.S. Constitution is the starting point, but state constitutions are allowed to surpass their level of protection for our God-given liberties. They're not allowed to surpass in terms of, well, the U.S. Constitution says the government can't do this, but then the state constitution says that they can, so therefore they can. That's not how it works. But whichever one provides the strongest protections for our God-given liberties, that's the one that wins. And so it's an important point to pay attention to your state constitution. Typically, a state constitution has a Declaration of Rights, and if it's a good state constitution, it starts with your Declaration of Rights. So at any rate, that is it's an important point. Read what your state constitution says, because all those people that fight and argue about, well, it says for a militia, and it says for this, and it says for that, and they have all these really ridiculous arguments when it comes to the Second Amendment. Okay, fine, but a lot of their arguments are completely thrown out when you look at the same right in the context of your state constitution. So anyway, just an important point to consider. But keep us updated, and I hope that I would challenge, in general, I would challenge any court trying to force a mental health evaluation, or a prosecutor or any attorney trying to force a mental health evaluation for any kind of case, unless there was a significantly good reason for doing so. So
I was just concerned about calling in and hogging the line, when other people have other questions too. So when you took my question, that's when I decided to call in, because it sounded like you had more information needed. So that's what I was doing.
Okay. Well, sounds good. Thanks for joining us today, and hopefully we'll see you next time as well.
All right, ma'am. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. So it's already after 1, but I was thinking that Foshin was going to be calling in with a question, so maybe he'll still do that. In the meantime, I want to let you guys know of a situation that probably would be appropriate for a mental health evaluation to come into play. But, in talking about custody, I was starting to mention that the recent episode from Chicago Med, and there's a nurse who'd been working in the critical burn unit for 10 plus years. And it was, I don't know, a year and a half or 2 years ago or something, in an episode, one of the charge nurses found this particular nurse. I forgot her name. I'm not that great with names. But anyway, we'll call her Susie. Susie was on the bathroom floor, and she had cut herself, and she was bleeding. And it's a good thing that the charge nurse came in and found her, and they were able to get her help. And Dr. Charles in the show, the lead psychologist or whatever, psychiatrist in the hospital, put her on a mental health hold. And as soon as she was confronted with the situation, she then wanted help, and she started getting help, counseling, therapy, and support. And she is no longer in the burn unit. She is a nurse in the ED. And, you know, obviously there's traumatic things that happen there, but it's just it's a different pace for her. Anyway, so you fast forward to last week's episode, and her husband is, you know, they're filing for divorce, and he is trying to take their daughter, who's I think a teenager, and move her across the country, because I don't know if that's where his family's from or whatever, but he's saying, well, she harmed herself at one point, so, you know, she's likely to be able to harm herself again, and if she does, that would have a severe negative impact on our daughter, and it puts her in harm's way, etc., etc. So obviously, where you have something like that, that would be a situation where there's enough evidence of something that is definitely relevant to the situation, whether it's right or wrong that the dad is doing that. There's at least a reason for, you know, the request to be made to talk about a mental health evaluation. And Dr. Charles ended up taking the stand and talking about, actually he was called as a witness, you know, by the dad, but he ended up talking about the progress that she's made, and, you know, her mental health now, and how because of the help that she's received, she's in a much better place now, and she's not carrying those burdens on her own, and she made the appropriate switch in her job from, you know, the kind of work that was just too much and causing her PTSD to another line of nursing work, and etc. And so anyway, he was able to talk about, well, gosh, in the end, as it stands right now, she's no more likely to harm her child than I am to harm mine. You know, she's a normal parent. She's in good mental health right now. So anyway, that's where talking about mental illness would be appropriate if there's actually been a physical manifestation and somebody is actually, you know, at a potential for being harmed, that kind of thing. So I'm just looking for other. Okay, not that this had question in front of it, so this might not have even been for me. But somebody said, again, you are guilty before you are ever innocent. And I don't know what that's about. If that was, it looks like the time frame was during that first call that I had. And I just want to emphasize, I wasn't saying that the guy should have been found guilty at all. And I'm not saying that the cops should have done what they were doing at all. But his question was fast forward way beyond that. His question was about filing a lawsuit to get damages from the officer and or the police department. And so before somebody goes down that road, they need to be realistic about what they're facing. They need to know it's going to cost a lot of money. They need to know it's going to take up a lot of time. And they need to know what the chances are for success and what some of the hurdles might be in success. Just because you are legally right doesn't mean that you should go to the courthouse every 5 minutes and try to pursue, you know, protecting your rights that way. I wish it were that easy to hold government officials accountable when they did something wrong, but the reality is the way our system is set up, and it's not to say that this part that I'm talking about, that this part of our system is messed up, because I think this is the best that any human system can come up with. But if you have the most reasonable jurors on a jury, they're going to see and hear the whole side of things, and they're going to do their best to be in that position and go, well, what is reasonable and what should each person have done in this situation? And that's all that I want to do, is get you to think about that before any of you put yourself in a position to sue a government official. You know, it's one thing when you're defending yourself. When you have, like, I had the city of Ormond Beach coming after me, and we're in the Court of Appeals right now. Actually, we're also in the circuit court. We're in multiple courts at the same time, but different story, different day. At any rate, I did not start all that. They started coming after me, and they think that they are going to put liens on my house and take my cars and take all my personal property and, you know, destroy me. Like, it's worse than a simple criminal case. In fact, that's one of the points I make about why this is excessive punishment, because if I murdered somebody, the most they could ever set my fine at in the state of Florida is $15,000. Arson and rape is $10,000. So those are malum in se cases, like I believe it was the second caller was talking about, malum in se cases versus malum prohibitum. This is, you know, my situation, just like the Second Amendment case that was talked about, in my situation is a code enforcement thing. It's not an inherently wrong thing. It's wrong because they're telling me I'm wrong. That's it. Because they've just determined that it is wrong. Well, that's not inherently wrong. No one is harmed here. So at any rate, when you are just defending yourself, such as I am, such as the last caller is, that's a different scenario than the first caller. The first caller already passed that hurdle. His case is dismissed. He is now talking about commencing a lawsuit where he is initiating a case against the government. And so when you're in that position, that's a whole nother ball game. You just need to know what you're up against, and you need to make sure that it's worth your time, your money, your effort, and quite frankly, your mental health, bringing back that subject, because it takes a toll on you, whether you're an attorney, an experienced attorney, or whether you're just the average Joe and you're trusting the advice of your counsel. You need to know what you're up against. So I hope that for those of you who are listening now, or who will be listening in the future to this call-in show, that's not at all what I was saying. I wasn't saying at all that he was guilty essentially until proven innocent. Not at all. Just wanting him to think about the reality of bringing a lawsuit against a government official. So let's see. Scrolling down just to see if we have. Don't see any questions. Something about $400. I have no idea what you guys are talking about. But anyway, some stuff is catching my eye. So I'm not seeing. Okay. I think it might have jumped quite a bit here. Oh, we did have a question that it missed. Are we not entitled to enjoy the benefit that are provided in other state constitutions? Okay, so then there's a reference to Article 4 of Section 2. I'm not sure if you're talking about Article 4, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. So, in a sense, yes. But that's like saying if I'm traveling through Indiana to get to Michigan from Florida, then, you know, whatever kind of, protections or, Second Amendment protections, my rights to carry my own firearm or something like that, that if an Indiana resident has those protections because of their state constitution, then me, as someone traveling through or visiting the state of Indiana, I would also have those protections. It's not to say if I stay in Florida and I never travel through Indiana ever again, that somehow I would be covered by some sort of protection that's written into the Indiana state constitution. That's not what's meant by Article 4, Section 2 of the United States Constitution. So I'm going to write myself a note about that too, in case we have more discussion on that. So it did. Okay, so it keeps jumping, guys. I think I have gotten. There's too many of you that are also using all caps in some other contexts. So Blue Steel, for example, mentioned mental health court is in all caps when you won't plead out, things like that. And there's a bunch of other things where people are putting things in capitalization. So in my attempt to try to use the the capitalizations, it's making it a little hard to see. So I may have skipped over some questions, but I think that was it for questions. So let's see. Okay. So yes, I would definitely recommend you checking out any kind of definitions of a term before you commence a lawsuit or before you even go in to defend yourself in any kind of case. So for example, if it's a case about firearms and somebody made a point of firearms don't necessarily equal arms, okay, Blue Steel, don't worry about it. Blue Steel is concerned about, it might not have just been you, Blue Steel, that was using caps and different things. Don't worry about it. I was just saying, it was, in fact, it's not just you. I see other people that were using capital letters too. I'm just saying that made it a little harder for me to see if there were questions, that's all. Hi, Sam. So anyway, to the point of looking up definitions, it is very important to do that. In fact, on that particular point about firearms and arms within the context of the Second Amendment, Lori might be able to do a quick search on our spreadsheets, but I think that we did a video specific to that way in the first season of Restore Freedom Weekly. I think it would have been the first season. I don't think it was in the videos we did before that, but it might have been. I just wasn't doing a lot with the Second Amendment specific issues in 2020 and 2021. But I think January of 2022, January or February, I think we did an episode or maybe just a smaller segment where I was specifically talking about the definitions of arms and firearms and, the whole Venn diagram of what terms overlap in which ways and things like that. So at any rate, no, we are not presuming, or really the better way to say it would be assuming that arms equal firearms, but that is the most commonly used terminology. But at any rate, yes, all arms are not firearms. That is correct. So, there are knives, there are, all kinds of other things. There used to be swords, not so much anymore. I wouldn't want to bring a sword to a gunfight. That's just me. So Amy asks, why does the government get unlimited funds to prosecute, but we the people aren't afforded the same use of our tax dollars? That's a very good question. And I will say, even though it seems like they have unlimited funds, they actually don't. The prosecutor's office does have a set budget, just like, other parts of government. Now, clearly government spends way too much money. But let me give you some insight from when I was a public defender for the state of Minnesota back in, almost 20 years ago. I'd like to pretend that I still look like I'm in my 20s, but anyway, almost 20 years ago when I was a public defender in the state of Minnesota, the public defense, so the system might be totally different now. I don't know. But when I was there, the public defender system was phenomenal. Now, it wasn't as developed, I guess I could say, as the prosecutors and what they had for resources, but we were a statewide system already back then. And we had, if you needed an investigator, we had regional offices where you could actually, you make the request and it's by priority and there's all these things. But there was an investigator that was employed by the statewide public defender's office. They had regular trainings that they provided. They had form banks and things, so when I started as a public defender and I was fresh out of law school, they gave me forms. The public defender statewide office gave me forms. So I knew, oh, hey, this is a typical motion that I should file in almost every single criminal case right at the beginning of the case. Once I get assigned, then I'm going to file this motion. It's going to be a motion to dismiss. It's going to contain, a motion to get certain evidence. It's going to be a motion to whatever. It had several standard provisions all into one motion. And it was phenomenal because it was the best way to help support and enable people that are probably really well intentioned, but maybe like me, were just brand new. I had a lot of family law experience already, but I had no experience in criminal law. I had no, clinics or practicums while I was in college or law school that dealt with the criminal system. So, when I took that job, I wanted to do the best for my clients, and the public defender system in Minnesota really enabled me to do that. So, it's at any rate, it's not in every scenario. Now, in Michigan, it's a little bit different now. It's a little bit better, but I want to say, what was it? I was still in Belding, so maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago, somewhere in there, I was a public defender in Michigan. And when, around that time, 8, 9, 10 years ago, they started converting to more of like a county-wide system. You have county-wide prosecutors, so then it was a county-wide public defender. And I believe they had fully made the conversion. So I want to say, every so often you elect your county prosecutor, and I believe you also elect your county public defender. I could be wrong about that. But at any rate, before then, it was just you were a list with a judge, and they would just assign, and each judge had their own methodology to who they would pick and how that would work and everything. And so if judges didn't like that you were an attorney that would actually question things and not go along to get along, and you would, fight for your clients zealously but appropriately in court, if they didn't like that you'd spend X amount of hours on it, then, they would take you off the list, or they would give you very few cases or something like that. If the judge happened to appreciate that you actually put in effort on the case and you were presenting only those legal arguments that would actually make a difference in your client's situation, and they were a good judge, and they wanted to see a fair and appropriate trial take place, then you were kept on the list and given more cases. So really, though, leaving it up to a particular judge like that, you're also on your own. There were no resources. You have, what is it called? The State Defender's Office or something like that. There's organizations that you can pay as an attorney. I could pay to be a part of in Michigan, and I have been a paid member of some of these organizations. But, when you're a public defender, to pay to be a part of an organization that may or may not be able to, assist you, first of all, they don't have investigators. It's more going to be like, a form bank, what forms can you file in different scenarios, and what are some good legal arguments to make and things like that. But it's not specific help to your case. Whereas my supervisors that I had when I was a state public defender in the state of Minnesota, I could call my supervisor, Krista, and I could say, hey, I have this question. This case is not like a normal case. Sure, the charges are XYZ, but there is a lot of funky stuff going on here, and I need some help, and I would get that help. So it's possible for public defender systems to be as robust, to be as, to have the resources that the prosecutors do. It's happened. Minnesota was once there. I don't know if they still are. Michigan, not so much. As to why, it's, unfortunately, it's a lot of, you have the people that are political heavy hitters, and you have people that are legal heavy hitters. And, it's a few select people that get to make a whole lot of decisions. And there's different committees and subcommittees in the state bar, and they make recommendations to changes for court rules, for, recommendations to the legislature, for different bills that are coming through. And so, you got to have the right people on those committees consistently to be able to make sure you not only affect the change that you want to see, but that it stays that way and doesn't revert the next time around when you have a new committee that's got all kinds of different... What in the world phone number is that? I don't even know. Somebody from Michigan is calling me right now, and my phone doesn't ring like that, so I'm not sure what phone number I have forwarded to my phone right now that's ringing. Anyway, let's see here. Okay, so that was a good question, though, because oftentimes, practically speaking, yes, the public, when they're being prosecuted, they are given very minimal resources. A public defender who's all on their own, no additional resources to tap into, that kind of thing. Or, you have to hire your own attorney, and, even in a private law firm, someone might not have all the greatest resources. When I was a private attorney, still taking criminal cases, I was only charging $150 an hour because I wanted to try to make it somewhat affordable for people, but $150 an hour did not cover for me to have all these extra resources and pay for all these extra things to be able to turn around and help my clients with that. So again, if somebody wanted to pay $400, $500, $600 an hour, sure, then I could have started tapping into a lot more resources, but it's unfortunately how things work. Let's see. Okay. So with that being said, there is a question. Danny's Thoughts is asking, why do you get a court fee on a situation? You're going to have to be a little bit more specific. I'm not sure what you mean there. Why do you get a court fee? It depends. It sounds like you might be talking about like if you get a traffic ticket or if you get a criminal case and then there's a court fee, at least in some states. Not every state has that. And sorry, while I'm waiting for you to answer me about that, I'm seeing Individualist is commenting, John Q. Public, your 2 comments about founding fathers were hidden by censoring YouTube. If there are comments that were hidden, I'm seeing his comments, and his comments are, it's in the, I don't know. I don't understand. I'm not, it's not being censored on our end. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but anyway, so who was that asked the question? Danny's Thoughts. Let's see, a citation. Okay, so if you go to court and you have some sort of citation. Interesting. Okay, sorry. Lori's clarifying that there's comments that show up on the stream, but not within the chat. Oh, like you guys can see it, so I can see the comments, but it's not showing up for you guys. Okay, that's very interesting. I have no idea why that would be. Obviously, it's a YouTube thing, if it's affecting how you guys are seeing it on YouTube, but yeah, okay. So maybe it's a good thing I have it up here. I don't know. Anyway, to answer the question, why, let's see. Why do you get a court fee on a citation? And with that, we have a phone call, so. Hello, this is Katherine. Hello?
Hello, Katherine.
Hi, there is a lot of background noise.
Yeah, I'm in a semi and I got hearing aids on.
You're in a semi.
My question was, I guess any citation you get, they always have a court fee plus your fine.
Right, okay.
That's given to you by the officer.
You mean by the police officer?
Yes. So if you're not gone to court, you may pay the fine, but you're still going to have to pay a court fee, and you're not even going to court.
And what state is that?
Well, it happens everywhere. I've been in Pennsylvania and been ticketed. I've been in Indiana and been ticketed. I mean, any place that you go, they always have a court fee attached to it that is a part of the ticket, a part of the fine.
Okay, so you're specifically talking about when you're getting like traffic citations.
Well, basically, yeah.
Okay.
I haven't gotten any other kind of citation.
Okay. So, if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and answer you a little bit more, but hang up with you just because there's a lot of the background noise that's kind of hard on the ears.
Okay, did we lose it then?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, let me change. Is that better?
Oh, that's way better. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, these are known to really pick up.
Okay, so
Okay, my whole idea on this is when you get that citation and you're getting it from an officer and it has a court fee on it, that has now made him judge and jury on that citation because you're not going to court. He's not fining you for going to court. But you're having to pay a court fee to somebody that's not even a judge.
okay, so, and this is where it depends on, this is why I asked about the state, because it does 100% matter. It's done differently in every single state. But generally speaking, if you have a traffic citation, you are given the opportunity to pay the, say, $200. You can pay the $200, or you can go to court and fight it, in which case then you might still have, you know, the $200, but you might have other kinds of fees, or you might have other ramifications involved. But if you know you've done something wrong, like you ran a red stop, or, you know, a red light or a stop sign or something like that, and you just want to take responsibility and you don't want to have to take a day off of work to go to court about it, I mean, that you might just go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to pay this. So generally speaking, the behind the scenes part, you might not physically go into court, but there's still a court file. There still is some sort of resolution to it, and there's still a record that, you know, shows up the same way, whether you went to court and were found guilty or you decided to pay it and essentially plead guilty right from the beginning. There's still the same government record being made. So as far as, you know, them, the police officer in that sense, they're not being a judge and jury and all that stuff, because it's you choosing to essentially plead guilty. It's not, you know, they're not finding you guilty. You'd still have your day in court if you want it.
Yeah, it may not necessarily be, you know, it's like going and saying that you're pleading no contest.
Exactly.
I just choose not to contest it because it's going to cost me more to contest it than if I just pay it.
Depending, yeah.
So now I'm getting charged a court fee because I'm basically saying I'm not going to contest it. I'm not pleading guilty. I'm pleading no contest by paying it.
Right. Yeah, so, you know, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Each state is a little bit different in how they do it, if they do it, how much the court fee is, if they have one, because, you know, each state kind of does their funding a little bit different for how they fund different parts of the government, and how they fund court operations, you know, is it changes then what the scope of how they feel like they have to recoup the expenses to make budget, basically. So, you know, it's really just a budgeting thing. And someone along the way decided, what's that?
Seems like you're getting their funding off of you to prosecute you. Because they got it off the guy before you that paid it. You know, they got it off the guy before that paid it. You know, to prosecute the people who, you know, just, you know, for a $35 ticket, am I going to take off work, which might cost me a couple $100 to go fight it? Or do I just pay it? That's a no contest situation. It's not a guilty or not guilty.
Well, but a no contest is a guilty. That's exactly what it is. No contest has the same end result as a guilty plea, or as, you know, being found guilty after a trial. So whatever legal consequences, unless there's a specific plea deal, but that, you know, that happens with guilty pleas as well. But generally speaking, a no contest is you're saying, yep, I know that you're saying I did this and I'm not going to fight you on it. And in the end, that means, okay, so you say I'm guilty, so I'm guilty. So it's just, I'm not saying I agree with them adding on court fees on top of fines. In fact, the fact that they make things so convoluted and complicated and you never know what the total amount is you're charged with something until it's all said and done with, I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I think it's absurd. I don't think it's, you know, it doesn't comply with the notions of due process at all. It's just more of a description about how it is, you know, what's currently happening. But anyway.
Well, just to look at a citation and look at it anyway, it's hearsay from one person that another person did something. That the person who's writing the citation has to prove that you've done it. But most of the time we find out when you go to court, that officer's already got a relationship with the judge, the prosecutor, and everybody else that you don't have. So you've already got three people, the person who wrote the citation, the prosecutor, and the judge already against you, but it's all hearsay from the officer in the first place. But they think since the officer's got the facts, the officer is always right.
Well, that's a whole other can of worms, but no, the officer is not deemed to be always right. In fact, in most jurisdictions, there is a jury instruction that is, if you have a jury trial, it's supposed to be read into with the rest of the jury instructions that specifically lets the jurors know that a police officer has the same, I don't know if I'm going to say this the right way, but essentially their testimony is the same as any other witness, and it's up to the jury to determine the credibility of that testimony, and they're not supposed to give an officer greater deference in his testimony simply because he's a police officer, but looking at his demeanor and whether it looked like he was telling the truth and whether all the facts that he was saying made sense and things of that nature. As far as his testimony being hearsay, it's not hearsay if, it'd be the same as any witness. If any witness said, oh, well, I saw the guy run the stop sign, seeing you run the stop sign, that's it's evidence, right? It's not hearsay. Hearsay is testifying about what somebody else said, and that somebody else is not in the courtroom to be cross-examined and, and have it be able to be challenged, basically. But if I go in there and if the officer goes in there and says, I saw him run, I was sitting, a block away or half a block away, and I saw him run the stop sign. He did not come to a complete stop at all. And that's what caused the accident or whatever. And so, you would have the ability to go, during your trial to cross-examine the officer and say, okay, and exactly where was your car? And, oh, so it was, parked here and here. And can you show me on this map? And, oh, well, it looks like if you were really parked where you said you were parked, that this building would be in your way or these trees would be in your way and you really wouldn't be able to see me. Were you using binoculars? And if so, why? Why did you have binoculars on that particular occasion and looking in that specific location? Whatever. That's the point of hearsay, is being able to.
Then you're even past the point of just going and saying, I didn't do it, plead not guilty. Now you've got more money invested, more time invested to go to prove that this guy is wrong and that you're right. So you get tied up in the court system that way.
Oh, absolutely. That's a different issue, but 100%, that it happens way too frequently that people have to invest. My son, he's 21 years old, and he, it was about 2 weeks ago, maybe a week and a half ago, he spent an entire day on his computer, waiting for a Zoom hearing, and he couldn't do anything else. And so and at one point he had me take the computer and he said, Mom, I really got to go to the bathroom. Can you make sure they don't call my name? Or if they do, tell them I'll be right back. And, so I had to sit there and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, because I didn't know he was, in court. Anyway, when the whole thing was over, he comes and explains it to me, and he had literally gone on in the morning, and they gave him like a 45-minute, check back in 45 minutes because we have this other case that's going to take a long time, or whatever the situation was. And they had him come back in 45 minutes, and then he was on for another 3 or 4 hours. And at the end, they had called all the names and not his. And he was thinking, well, this is great because the officer that tried to write me this ticket isn't even here, so I should be able to get a motion to dismiss granted. But at the end, the court said, oh, well, yeah, we sent out a notice that we changed your court date. And he said, well, I never got a notice. And they said, oh, yeah, we mailed it out yesterday. Now, if his mama had been on the call at that point, I would have said, excuse me, but you can't put in the U.S. mail a notice on one day and expect that by the very next morning, he's already going to have it in his hand and know that he doesn't need to come to court. So the officer could have come to court just the same. If you're going to email or send immediately a notification to the officer so he doesn't waste his entire day, then you need to have the same common courtesy for the defendant. So as far as wasting the time goes, yes, that is actually something that happens on a regular basis. That's a totally different systemic problem. But you're right. Our system is plagued with all kinds of things where your resources just get consumed. And that's what I was talking earlier when the initial caller called in today about wanting to file a civil lawsuit. That's a whole new ball game then, right? Because when they suck you in, and they're bringing you, like, for a criminal case or a traffic case or, you know, a city code compliance case or something like that, you don't have a choice. They're bringing you, and you can choose how you want to respond, but you're responding in one way or another. But when you're choosing to bring a lawsuit against the government, that's where, you know, it's not being forced upon you, and you have to really think about if it's worth it, because it's also expensive in that sense too. But anyway, hopefully I was able to
Thank
answer
you
your...
for the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do a great job, and I listen to you as much as I can. I just seen you were on. And this came up just the other day when I was thinking about something. It's like, wait a minute, that guy just put a court cost on there on a citation, and there's no court hearing. He's saying you can pay this, and this is what it's going to be, and have the court cost on. No, they're already paying those people to be clerks. Shouldn't have an additional fee to have them create a piece of paperwork because this guy said so.
Yeah. It's, as far as the why though, the why is it's because of how they do their, you know, how it's actually most likely not even the court's fault, if you want to call it that. That's how the county or whatever government agency, it could be from the state, it could be the county, it could be whatever, but there's usually a legislative body, county commissioners, state legislature, whomever, that has decided this is how we're going to do funding for courts. So we're going to have this certain pot of money coming from, you know, state lottery, for example, and then the rest of it we're going to have to make up with, you know, citations and things like that, and we'll have a $25, $75 court cost added to each case or something. So anyway, that's the why. Whether it's right or wrong is a different scenario or a different question, but that's why you have those. So anyway.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you. All right, guys. So let's see. I don't see any more questions. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that another John has commented that his noise was too much. I actually thought when he changed earbuds or whatever it is that he did at the beginning of the call that it actually filtered out most of the noise, but I apologize if that was, you know, too much to keep him on in that sense. But anyway, so I don't see any more questions, and it looks like we had lost, this is a public service. So I don't know what his question was. I'm sure I'll see it on my phone at some point later on, but we'll get him to call in next time. So anyway, with that being said, I wanted to throw our resource links up here for you. Go ahead, check out our website, please. It's restorefreedomkh.com. Don't forget that KH. It's super important. A lot of people that aren't the greatest about technology tend to forget the KH and think it's all good. It's not. And you can hit our restorefreedomkh.com/donate page. You can go to the OB case. That's the Ormond Beach case that I currently have pending. It's lasted, 2.5 years at this point. It's been great. And the latest filings, there was a motion filed in the circuit court part of the case almost a month ago. 25 days ago, and there was the latest to be filed in the Court of Appeals was my reply brief, since they threw out all of our briefs and had us start all over again just within the last couple months. So my reply brief was filed February 16th, so just 9 days ago. So there's a lot happening in those cases, and my goal is to get the website continually updated. There's been a lot of background stuff that you guys won't see, but trying to clean up a lot of different things, and some programs and things we were using that didn't quite function anymore. I had to find all new stuff. So I think I've gotten all those kinks worked out. But anyway, next I will be working on the Ormond Beach page on our website, and trying to get more briefs and motions and things like that on there in a way that's not overwhelming, but that you could still see and access things and be able to utilize those to copy the legal arguments in your own cases and utilize what you can there. Please also consider donating if you can. Every little bit helps. Like I just made reference to, we had a bunch of our like WordPress plugins and things like that help us push out our posts and things out to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, that kind of thing, that I was using the free ones, and I researched every single possible free one that's out right now and ones we had tried before. And they essentially, the crappy thing is they were pulling over the posts. They were pulling over far too many things, though, things that were never supposed to be sent over. So Facebook would be littered, or LinkedIn would be littered with all kinds of things that I never intended to make it as a social media post. So at any rate, I've had a new expense, another $65 on top of everything else in the last couple days, just to be able to find a plugin that works and sends things out appropriately. And doesn't double things up, because if you're checking our Facebook page or LinkedIn account or Twitter or whatever, because you want to see the latest on different legal news or topics or videos, I don't want you to be inundated with the same post coming in like 7 different formats. So anyway, any little bit can help. So if you want to support us in that way, please go to restorefreedomkh.com/donate. And you can do so in a variety of ways: PayPal or Cash App, Venmo, things like that. There's also the address if you want to send a check or something like that as well. So I think that's all. In the meantime, I also do want to let you guys know that I'm doing my best to try to get back into doing some of the shorter videos on some topics. We had one, if you haven't seen it yet, check out the video on Biden's pardons that I did last week, and it took me like 10 hours, and I produced a 1 minute and 38-second video for you in that 10-hour period of time. So hopefully I will be able to get some other videos on some great topics that will be informative and helpful for you, useful for you, that don't take me 10 hours to put together. And check those out. Give them a thumbs up, hit the like button, hit the share button, tell people about those as well. So let's see. I think that is about all. So please join us the second Tuesday of March. The second Tuesday of March at noon Eastern Standard Time. Most likely we will still be going live only on YouTube. And we will look forward to having you join us then. Thanks, guys.
Our work to restore freedom would not be possible without support from people just like you. From the various software and hardware needed to the legal research materials, every dollar you can donate helps. Make sure to like and share this video too. And remember to follow and subscribe and click that notification button. Together we can restore freedom.